here we have a couple pork bellies. They're 2.5 pounds each, so I basically bought a 5-pound trimmed belly straight from the butcher. So there's no skin on this pork belly. We are experimenting with 2 different flavor profiles. On this side here we have basically just a maple cure, and this side over here we decided to try a jalapeno maple cure. So the steps to get to this point here, which we obviously didn't video, is the curing process. And there's several ways to cure bacon, from a wet brine to a dry cure. This one here we decided to do a dry cure, which is basically straight up salt, and I use of course kosher salt with a little bit of Tender Quick from Morton's, which will give you your nitrates and your nitrites. That's what's going to give the bacon its pink color. If you don't use the nitrites and the nitrates, you can still cure the bacon with just pure salt, and it'll be cured. But when you cook it, it'll actually have that brown pork color, so it won't actually look like bacon. It'll actually just taste, that way, but at least be natural. So you have to be very careful when you're putting on your Tender Quick to make sure you don't put on too much of that cure, so it doesn't spoil or ruin your meat with too much salt and poison you. So make sure you read the directions always when you're putting that on. But the process is basically, I took the right amount of that Tender Quick and I rub it around on both sides of the meat, including the fat side, and that gave it the nitrates. And then I used the kosher salt on top of this. With this one here is just pure maple syrup. So again, you don't have to worry about too much of the kosher salt, of how much to put on. Basically what I did, I just sprinkled it on with a light layer. Then I took the maple and glazed the whole thing, kind of just pat it around, and I did that to both sides. And then you can see, like I have over here on the salmon side here, I've got a bin in the fridge, and these sat on there so that the juices from when the salts take out that moisture can go somewhere without soaking into the meat. That'll really help you get that dry cure well. So then we basically would put that into a bin, cover it up in the fridge, and every other day I'm basically flipping the meats. Sometimes I'll add a little bit more kosher salt, no more of that Tender Quick, and again little bit more of the maple syrup. And that's a 5 to 7 day process, depending on, again, how thick your meat is. This is a real thin bacon, so 5 days is more than sufficient. Sometimes if you get those really fat pork bellies, you want to make sure you go the full 7 days to get a true cure on that. The main thing is during that 5 days is every day you flip it, and you're draining your bin as it fills up with the juices from the meat, so that again it's not soaking into the pork. The one on the other side here is basically the same kind of concept with the Tender Quick rubbed in, and then I have a jalapeno maple seasoning that I used on top of that. That's why it's a little more red from the seasonings. And same kind of thing, every day just making sure you're flipping it, a little more salt and seasoning on top to get those juices out. And about day 5 or day 6, depending on again where you're at on your curing process, you'll notice your meat is going to start getting a little more stiff. It's not going to be as pliable. You can feel it in your hands. That way you know that the moisture from the meat is actually coming out, and you know you got a cured piece of meat. The day before the smoker, and this is what I did yesterday, is I basically take it out, and again, depending on how thick your meat is, it depends on how long you want to soak it in water, but I filled up the bin completely with water, let these things soak anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours, just depending on how salty you want your meat. Bacon's going to be salty anyway, so you don't have to worry too much, but again, this is real thin, so I did about an hour soak on this meat. And drain it, pat it dry really well with some paper towels, and then I put it right back into the fridge onto the grate again, this time uncovered in the fridge. And the next time I do the pork, I'll show you how I insert a fan inside of the refrigerator so that I've got air circulating into the refrigerator. And the point of that is you really want to get this meat dry. If you look really closely, you can see that it kind of gets a skin on it. This skin wasn't there before I actually put the fan on it, and that's what that's doing there. You're sealing in your flavors, but you're also, the skin helps the pork to really soak in a lot of that smoke flavoring. Since we're not going to smoke it very long at all, it'll really help at that point. So now the next step, we'll go check our smoker and we'll put this on. The first thing we're going to do is start off with a cold smoke, meaning that you don't want that smoker above 150 degrees inside. You want it right around 120 so that we're not cooking the meat. We're going to, again, continue the curing process, get that smoke into the meat. We'll do that for probably about an hour to two, and then we'll crank up the smoker on the heat to about 175 and let it smoke for another 3 hours or so. Again, because of the thickness, it's just, we're going to have to probe it. And we are going to stop when this meat hits an internal temperature of 150 degrees. That way you've got a cured meat. You can actually eat it if you wanted to, but it's still going to be raw, and then allow us to fry it up later. So let's start the process.